one or two advice that you would give to any underdog out there, what would you tell them?
My mom always told me, Benji, if you don't take responsibility, you take orders. And privilege is always relative. All these things on paper would have never happened. The probability is 0.0000001. Maybe that. The result of hard work is more work. That's the reward. Guys, we're in Tanzania, but we're gonna build this company in England. And you're like, dude, what? Like, most of us don't even have a passport. Like, what are you talking about? What's up, everybody? We are here once again chilling today in Barcelona. I'm in the building with Jordan. And before we get started, I want to just let y'all know I'm super excited.
Benji, this is my show. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 4th episode of Wise Underdogs. Today, I'm so excited and so honored to host my really dear close friend that I know for about like 8 years, Benjamin Fernandes from Tanzania. We've known each other since our Stanford days. We met actually in Manaus in Brazil. It's out of random places in Amazon. But today we're gonna interview Benji for all his stories, struggles, wishes, dreams, vulnerabilities, and fears, and it's gonna be epic. So although Benji started the show like that, it's gonna be different. It's not gonna be about Benji. It's still about Benji, but it's gonna be my way, okay? So we're gonna go deep today. All right, let's go. Welcome to Barcelona.
Thank you. Gracias.
Can you say some Spanish words?
Un poquito español. Mi nombre es Benjamín.
Benjamin.
Qué bueno con la suerte.
Benji, you've been in so many medias. You were actually a TV personality before, and you were also behind the scene. But what else do people don't know about you?
Oh, like with TV?
For TV or like beyond Nala? I think every now and then we always associate you with Nala. But is there something else beyond Nala that what Benji is?
Oh, there's a lot. Yeah, I think you often get boxed into a certain like, okay, you are like this tech CEO or whatever, you're building this company.
Right.
But I think there's a lot of personal elements to my life that many people don't know or don't see or don't know what I value. One of it's my faith, obviously. Like I think I'm very vocal about my faith here and there and like public about it. But I think that's a large element that's really important to me. Another part is probably my love for Tanzania, which some people who know me well can see, but...
oh my God, guys, this guy graduated from Stanford with Tanzanian cape, like shamelessly, like
pulled up at the graduation.
Like this African, like Maasai tribe, like
on
who
stage.
is this village boy that's went to
Pulling
Stanford?
up.
We'll put a picture there later.
No, so there's a lot of elements like that of obviously of my personal life too, where I grew up in Tanzania, my family, how that's impacted how I look at the world, that are really important to me.
Right. So tell us more about your story as a Tanzanian kid growing up in Tanzania and then like made it to Stanford, first Minnesota, right, for your college, and then Stanford, and then now building a global fintech company. Like, who was Benji as a child? Like, and you mentioned faith, like, I guess that's also from childhood, and then how your family raised you.
Yeah.
Tell us more a bit about your upbringing.
Yeah, so I grew up in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania. It's a city on the east coast of Eastern Africa. And, it was very different versus living in Barcelona, where we are today, or London, or New York, or San Francisco. And K through 12, my sister and I got this scholarship by this British family to take us to school. And that enabled my parents to take us to this nicer school because my dad knew, had met randomly the person who started the school, and they're like, hey, do you know what? We'll help sponsor your kids to go to this school. And that completely changed my life and like how we were growing up. And then from school, university was never a thing that was common in my family. Actually, nobody in my family has been to university. And my mother or my father's side, nobody's been to university. And the school, my sister was doing really well in school. I have one sister, she's a year older than me. And they said, do you know what? She should go to school in America. She's doing really well. Like, she should apply for university there. And so she did. She got into all the schools she applied to. and she ended up going to Northwestern in Minnesota because she had a few friends in Minnesota as well, and they gave her a large scholarship there.
Right.
So then the following year, I was there, and I used to get in big trouble in school. Unlike my sister, I used to be very bad in school. I got very bad grades. Actually, we can probably share the grades, but in my A levels, I got 2 U's, a C, and an E. So a U in the British syllabus is so low below F, it means ungraded.
Right, you're beyond failure, man. You're beyond salvation.
So I got 2 U's, and I was like, man, there's no way. And so I didn't get into the schools, and then the school gave me a 3-month trial period, a probation period. If you do well, I was used to probation already.
We will talk about probation later.
Probation is a whole separate topic. If you do well, you stay. If you don't do well, you're returning home. And so I knew I had a 3-month trial period that if I did well, I'd be able to stay in America. If I didn't do well, I'd be returning home. So I remember telling my dad, hey, I got this 3-month probation period. And my dad just looked at me. He's like, 3 months? I give you 1 month.
Whoa, okay.
He's like, I know you're not going to get past the 3 months and you're going to be sent back home. And I was like, okay, do you know what? Fine, let me prove him wrong. And it gave me a lot of motivation. So I'd moved to America the first time when I was 17. I never lived in the United States before. And I remember before going to classes, I would sit down by my bed and pray. I'm like, God, please help me become the head and not the tail. Like, I believe I become first and not last. That was the prayer I prayed every single day while going to school. And I think there's a huge difference for me between praying and actually believing that something could happen.
Right.
And so I'd pray and I'd ask God for wisdom. And then obviously I'd go to class, but I'd also go to all these tutoring sessions or go to meet the professor just to understand all the questions I had, because I was embarrassed to ask them in class in front of everybody. And after my first semester, just for context, Jordan, in the school I went to, there was maybe 4 international students from Africa.
So the rest are just Midwesterners.
Yeah. So very non-diverse school, very non-diverse school, I'll leave it at that. And so I look around in the class and I see nobody that looks like me. And I'm like, okay, cool. You got to figure this out. So I definitely felt imposter syndrome because I was like, why am I here?
Right.
I was definitely very lost there and sitting around just looking at, I was like, okay, cool. I have to try really hard. So after my first semester, I get my grades back and open my report card and I got straight A's.
Wow.
And I remember getting on the dean's list and the honor list for the university that year. And then I called my dad. I said, Dad, I just got my grades. He's like, cool. Are you coming back home? Because I'm going to put you in the farm. And you're going to stay in the farm in some village. So my dad said, if I didn't do well after 1 month, he's going to send me to some village in a farm. I'm going to work there.
Okay.
And my dad was so serious. He doesn't, you've met my dad.
Yeah.
He's not joking about that stuff. He's like, no, you're going to the village. And then when he says that you're going to the village. So
right.
I was like, man, I don't want to go to the village, man. So I remember he says, no, really, is this your grades? I was like, yeah. So then they allowed me to stay for another 3 months. So after another 3 months of probation, I got on straight A's again. So then got on to National Honor Society in the United States.
Wow.
For academic performance. And then while still at school, I used to be involved quite a bit. I volunteered quite a lot. I used to be in student government and do all these activities and planning on campus. And that helped me get involved, but also kept me very disciplined to work because I knew I didn't have much time. So I'm like, okay, I have 2 hours. I have to do this assignment in 2 hours. And I was very disciplined with working. Now from there, right before graduating, so I graduated top of my class for the program. And I remember right before graduation, my professor came up to me. He's like, hey, Benji, I want to talk to you. I was like, cool. He's like, and I was 20 years old. And he says, promise me you're going to do one thing. I said, what? He says, promise me you're going to apply to do your MBA and you're going to go to Stanford and Harvard and nowhere else. And I said, what's an MBA?
Wait, I didn't know this part.
Yeah.
Your professor said that to you when you graduated?
Yeah.
You never told me this.
Yeah,
wow.
right? Because that's what even put the thought of going to business school.
So he planted a seed in you that you will go here. Okay.
Yeah, he says, you should do this.
Okay.
And I don't know, I think words are really powerful. And I think often we underestimate how words can breathe life into your own life.
Right.
And so when he told me that, I said, I don't know what an MBA is. Just go home and look it up. So this is March, obviously March for these schools is round 3, right?
Right.
So I applied in March. I was like, cool, like let me just apply.
You did apply to Stanford MBA in March, like after graduation?
Yeah. Just March I applied, and then I get waitlisted. And I was like, whoa, I'm like 20 years old, 19, 20 years old. I'm getting waitlisted at Stanford MBA. I was like, that's,
not bad.
Yeah, it's not bad. Because it was a school that for me was just like, I'll never get in. Let me just try to apply. I was like, and then eventually they rejected me after the waitlist. And then they said I should apply again. So I applied again round 1.
In the same year?
Yeah.
Okay.
So actually, in that time period, I had graduated from undergrad. I moved back to Tanzania. I was working in Tanzania. I used to be a TV host, as you mentioned.
Right.
And one of the big projects that was happening was enabling people to pay for TV subscription on mobile money through payments. So like that was one of the projects I got to work on. And then I remember it was June 10th, 2014. It was like the World Cup, or July 10th, 2014. It was the World Cup final. And I remember going to church, because the World Cup final is always on a Sunday. I went to church, and the pastor said, "Hey, if there's anything going on in your life, you want to pledge and like donate to something." And I said, "You know what? Like I want to actually take a seed and like sow like my income for like a certain thing that I wanted," which for me was school.
Tell us how much you were earning back then.
My highest salary I was earning in TV was $490 a month.
Oh wow. Yeah.
So that was the highest I had ever earned in television.
So by the way, guys, applying to Stanford is like, I don't know, $500?
Yeah.
It's really expensive.
They give a waiver if you come from like a
lower economic
exactly.
status, yeah.
So I got the application fee waived. But yeah, I didn't have the money to. So what happened was on that day, July 10th, why this is really important is I went to church, pastor said this, and for me, Stanford is the most expensive business school in the world to attend. It's like probably $250,000.
$250,000
right now. So I said, there's no way like me, my family, anybody can pay to go to this school. So I said, the only way I can go is if I get a full scholarship. And I remember telling my dad I want to apply. My dad was like, "What's Stanford?"
It's the same thing with my mom. Why don't you go to Harvard?
Yeah.
I'm like,
why don't you go to a good school like Washington University or something? It's just
nobody knows Stanford in Africa and Asia. Yeah.
Exactly. So especially in emerging markets, it's not a school that has a huge reputation. So I said, okay, cool. Let me just try. So I applied on that Sunday. I went and I took out all of my income from the bank. And I said, God, I'm praying, this is my seed for my education.
Wow.
And this is, if it's your will, it's your bill. And I said, God, you'll help me get there. And for context, in kindergarten to 12th grade, we were sponsored by this British family. University and undergrad, we were sponsored.
Scholarship.
Yes, by full scholarship. Then here at Stanford, I said, there's no way we can afford to pay for this. So if I'm supposed to go to this school, it has to be a full scholarship.
Yeah.
So I prayed. I remember it was July 10th, 2014. And I remember I obviously studied. I did the GMAT exam. And then I submitted my application in September. And I left it. I didn't realize that. I knew the deadline date, but I didn't realize they call you or anything like this. I didn't know any of that. So I remember coming home. I think it was a Tuesday. It was December 9th or 10th, 2014. I was coming back home from work. And just for context, Jordan, even when I was studying for the GMAT exam, I'd wake up at 4:30 in the morning. I'd study from 5 to 7 a.m. I'd leave to go to work. I'd get to work at 8:30 a.m. I'd go to work from 8:30 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. I'd come back home from work around 6 or 6:30. I'd study from 7 to 9 p.m. I'd have dinner, shower, go to bed. Did the same thing for 3 months while studying for the GMAT exam. Saturdays, I never went out with friends. I just stayed home and I just studied. Sundays, I'd go to church. I'd come back home, I'd study. And I did this for 3 months just to do well on the exam. And I'm not a good test taker naturally. It's not something I'm very gifted at. And I was like, I just need to get really good at this and just practice. And so December 10th, I'm getting home. And I get home and I see my phone's ringing. And it's like a +1650 number. It says California. And I pick up the phone and I answer. I was like, hello? It's like, hi, is this Benjamin Fernandes? It's like, yeah. And he's like, hi, this is Derek Bolton, Director of Admissions at Stanford. Do you have a few minutes to chat? I was like, yeah. And, your heart's beating. You don't know what he's going to say. That. You had the same experience. So I'm sitting in Dar es Salaam. This phone is ringing. And he's telling me, do you have a few minutes? I was like, yeah. He's like, well, first of all, I would like to say congratulations. We're excited to accept you to the program. And then Jordan, the call drops.
That's it.
Yeah, so the call drops. So like, bloop, bloop, bloop. I'm like,
that ever happened to me as well.
It happened to you too?
Yeah, I was in the jungle in Sulawesi Islands. Like,
so my phone drops, and then, dude, I don't have international calling.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I can't call this number back. So I go out. I remember I was staying with my mom and dad. I go out to the living room. I tell my mom, like, hey, I just got into Stanford. And my mom was like, okay, and then I tell my dad, I just got into Stanford. My dad just says, so who's paying? Like, no congratulations, nothing. Right. Like, no well done. God. I was like, oh. So then I remember going back to my bedroom. I was like, okay, fine. So I sat there in my bedroom. I kept staring at my phone. And I just sat on my bed. And I got in my bed and I kneeled on something. I was like, God, remember that prayer I prayed 6 months ago and where I pledged my seed for my education. And I said, remember, your will is your bill. I just was praying by my bed and I just like kept quiet and I just put my phone like next to me and I just kept staring at my phone for like 20 minutes. About 25 minutes later, the phone is ringing again. So I pick up. He's like, hey, sorry, we got cut off there.
Oh, he followed up. Okay.
He followed up and called me. He's like, anyway, at Stanford, we give out 8 full scholarships to African students a year. It's called the Africa MBA Fellowship. The team and I have decided to give you one of these full scholarships to attend Stanford Graduate School of Business this year.
Whoa.
Dude, Jordan, when he said that, I had like goosebumps everywhere. I couldn't even.
I had goosebumps now.
I couldn't even say thank you. I started crying.
Right.
And he's like, "Are you there?" I was like, "Yeah, I'm here." Like I couldn't even speak. And then I go out and like I tell my mom and my dad. My mom starts crying. Like it was like this moment that I will never forget for the rest of my life. It was when we're sitting there, December 10th, 2014, just having this moment with my parents, where it was something that I never thought would happen.
Right.
And now here I'm getting accepted to the #1 business school in the world on a full scholarship as like this nobody from Tanzania.
Yeah, just to give context, Stanford only admits about 6%. Now it's 4%. It's really hard to get in. And Benji got a full scholarships. And when I got the admission as well, I had the same experience, but I think yours is much more because none of your family has ever been to college, let alone MBA, right? So for them to be able to receive this is like a life-changing ticket for you and maybe for them as well, like to different life stages or like life opportunities, right? Yeah. Can you walk us through more of that, Benji, like the power of faith, the power of resilience, the power of working hard, the power of like, I guess you always hustle, you said, right? For underdogs, I mean, many of us as underdog, we went through that. That's how we survive. I mean, that's where we get to where we are today, at this stage of our life. Can you walk us through that journey in your life? Like, how has that shaped you as a person?
Yeah.
Or even as a founder in Nava?
Yeah. I think it comes from like 2 things. My mom always told me, Benji, if you don't take responsibility, you take orders.
Wow. If you don't take responsibility, you take orders. So, okay. That's deep.
And she said that's a principle of life.
Oh.
So I knew there was no choice. You had to just figure it out. There was no, like, fine, if you don't do well in school, like this will whatever. There was no choice. You're constantly fighting. And on paper, Jordan, like, I look back at some of the things that we've done today. Like the probability is like, imagine a kid from Dar es Salaam, a scholarship for our high school, scholarship for undergrad, scholarship at Stanford, coming back, working for Bill and Melinda Gates, going back to start this company, getting into Y-Combinator, which has a 1.6% acceptance rate.
Yeah, that's even more.
Raising $10 million, raising $40 million, getting the business to becoming profitable, employing over 150 people. All of these things on paper would have never happened. The probability is 0.0000001, maybe that, right? And yes, there is faith, but it also is your responsibility to work really hard. And many people don't know that. Maybe people don't see the behind the scenes of, you know this because you know me. Like this morning.
This is too much in front of my face. Benji, stop working. Like, yo, we were in like safari in where is it? In Tanzania, right?
Yeah.
And then this guy was still working at 2 a.m. You could be eaten by a lion out there, man.
On the laptop.
On the laptop.
I need to finish this thing. And many people don't know that. Many people don't see the behind the scenes. Like this morning, I went to bed at 3 a.m. before coming here, and I slept for like 5 hours, not even 5 hours, and I came here, and because I needed to finish some work. And my dad said, like, this is a famous saying. It says, "The result of hard work is more work." That's the reward. And we had no choice. There was no, okay, do you know what, Benji, even if you don't do well, like, here is 10 houses you can live in, and here is
we don't
like
have
5 cars or 10 cars you can sit on. And privilege is always relative. For example, somebody in rural Indonesia probably thinks moving to Jakarta is privileged.
Yes.
Somebody in Jakarta probably thinks moving to Singapore might be a huge privilege. Somebody in Singapore probably thinks moving to Hong Kong is a privilege. Hong Kong moving to Dubai, moving to London, moving to New York is a privilege, right? So privilege is always relative. And the problem is everybody compares themselves against somebody else. And comparison is the thief of joy, where people assume that, oh, this person has it better than I do.
Right.
And it creates this never-ending cycle of what's better. So similarly with work, I knew that we needed to just figure this out. Like, I knew that because I had the 3-month probation at school, there was no choice. And because you're under this fire, I'm like, okay, cool, I have to work really hard and figure this out. I had to say no to so many different things, constantly. No, I can't come. And it was tough, Jordan. Even when building Nala, you know how many things I've said no to. Like, there's, a friend's birthday, a friend's wedding, or this life event happened. My friend had their first kid. Benji, can you come for the kids, housewarming, whatever? I can't go. I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry. And I feel so guilty sometimes. I feel really bad. And it's not a great feeling. It's not easy. And then you see the friend later like, hey, you missed my wedding. And those things for me is really tough. It really sometimes affects me emotionally. Like, I try to think, I'm like, man, I missed one of my close friends' weddings. Like, while I was trying to build this company, while I was trying to do this. And yeah, there's a lot of sacrifice that's involved in trying to build something when you feel like there's a purpose that's driven behind it.
But walk us through more now that we've seen you in Japan. So is that your first ever break? I mean, your first ever break, I remember your 30th birthday, we were in Tanzania. So you took a week off, right? Yeah. So what shifted in your mind and perspective in terms of, okay, this is enough. This is a lot of sacrifice, but I need to also take care of myself or prioritize on things that matter to me beyond work.
Yeah. A few things started happening. So one, I started losing hair.
Guys, this was full when we met. Now he's losing.
My head was definitely full. So I started losing hair, and I'm like, okay, this is different.
So it has a physical toll on you.
Yeah. So I was like, oh, okay, like that's different. It wasn't like that before. I had more hair than Jordan
before.
That's
the first comment I said when I was having a call with Benji when he got into Y-Combinator. Dude, what the fuck is your hair? Where did it go? You're younger than me. Exactly. You're losing faster than me.
Yeah, hair started going very fast. And then I was like, okay. And then I think, my investors were very supportive, right? Because they know how much time I put into building the company. And they were telling me like, hey, Benji, can you please take some time off? And then my team as well, like, would always tell me, Benji, take some time off. Because like some of those who know me really well, like, know either I'm in the office really late or on the weekends, I'm constantly working. And when you feel responsible for a lot, man, my WhatsApp, you know my WhatsApp.
The guy
it's so bad.
Has, 1,000 unread messages.
1,000.
1,600 So if I want to talk to Benji, I have to contact his assistant. Hey, Susanna, like, where's Benji? Has he landed yet? Can we have dinner? Like, what the hell? My friend is so famous now. It's your weight of responsibility.
Yeah, so like I think the challenge is customers would get my phone number and they would start calling me.
Oh, wow.
So most of these, probably 1,600 messages, probably at least 1,300 is just customers.
Okay.
And like, hey, this is broken, or can we fix this, or like I have a feature request or whatever. And they just share my phone number. Like, oh, you want to talk to the CEO of Nala? Here's the number. And they just share it till today. It's like culturally like normal. Like, oh, I'm just going to send you. Yeah, it's like, oh, let me just send you the number really quickly.
Yeah.
And then when I don't respond, you don't respond to them. Because I frankly didn't, I'm not going to read 1,600 messages.
Yeah.
There's probably messages in there that are 3 years old or 4 years old I've never opened. And that person's like, oh, look, I texted the CEO of Nala and he was like so arrogant, never responded to it. I probably never even saw it. And I think those are the things that become challenging is as you're trying to create separation, as you're trying to create personal time with your friends and your family, it becomes a lot more difficult because time is your most important asset and currency you have every single day, and how you're prioritizing, how you're spending your time is really critical, especially for your personal well-being.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So there is that realization and also, I guess, a permission from your board, in this case, your bosses, to take a break.
Yeah, it's a bit hard. They've never said I shouldn't take a break. They've actually been telling me to take more breaks. It's always tough because as a founder, you're constantly judged. And that's what most people don't talk about.
Yeah.
I talk to so many of my founder friends. I'm sure a lot of people you speak to.
Yeah.
They
told me the same thing.
Constantly feel judged. And you're like, yeah, Jordan, take some time off. And then you take the time off and like you're with your family and let's say in wherever you are. And like, oh, look, there's Jordan once again, just on holiday, I was like, dude, what? This is like my first holiday in a year. And people don't know. Then they start assuming, they say, oh yeah, like, I don't think he's a hard worker. Based on like, maybe they see one photo of you like at the beach, like, all of a sudden you're not a hard worker. It's insane to me, but that's the reality as a founder. Like you have to constantly think about these. You have to constantly think about, and which is not fun. It's so unfair to the founder. The founder is who's going to generate the most value for any VC because they're working their butt off to try to make the company valuable. Mm-hmm. And their well-being is super critical to the success of the business. But often as founders, and I'll say this for speaking for myself, we don't even get told, hey, look, do you know what, take it, like you've been working really hard, like take a week off. That conversation almost never happens.
So Benji, maybe walk us through this founder's mentality. Like, do you believe or do you think it takes a different breed to be a founder? And why do you think people like us, the underdogs, people who went through a lot before, are more suitable for this kind of journey?
I use a few things here. So, like, we didn't have friends start multi-million-dollar tech companies. Yeah. We didn't grow up seeing uncle made it very big or auntie made it very big because they started this tech company, moved to Palo Alto and Silicon Valley, and like they grew and then became extremely successful. We didn't see that. So I didn't have that role model growing up. Yeah. In most emerging markets, people look at politicians as role models. Yes. Like, oh, become a politician, become like so-and-so. And all the examples given to you are like political examples in your whole childhood. So often you have so many young people want to be politicians or music artists. Oh, like, in Latin America, I want to be like Daddy Yankee, or Bad Bunny, or whoever it is. In Africa, I want to be like Burna Boy, or Wizkid, or Davido, and, role models are super critical for success of any emerging market, in my opinion. So when I look in the tech space and I look at Tanzania, I'm like, who do I look up to in the tech space? Mm-hmm. And when you don't have somebody to look up to, you start looking up to other countries and like other areas, but there's nobody that looks like you or grew up in the same background. So you're trying to paint this whole journey that's brand new for you as well. Yeah. And that's so difficult. Yeah. And, when I talk to some of my founder, one of the things that sometimes is challenging is I'll talk to one of my founder friends in the United States who's like, brother runs a tech company, dad ran a tech company, like auntie, uncle, or own VC funds in Silicon Valley and so on. And so all this stuff was so normal to them. Failure was normalized to them. Yeah. It was just like, all right, cool, Jordan, you know what? Raise $3 million. If you fail, it's fine. Like, we'll give you a job at this VC fund. Right. There was no, if it's failed, it's fine for me. No. It was like, think about it, Jordan. We're finishing business school in 2017. You have all these top organizations coming to you like, hey, come work for us. We'll pay you. I remember when I first got my salary offer from a large organization, I remember asking them, I was like, I froze when I saw the number on the salary. And I said, they're like, oh, is there anything wrong? I said, yeah. I said, is there an extra zero? It was like a mistake. And the recruiter's like, no, is it not enough? I was like, no, it's more than enough. I didn't expect to
be paid this much.
Yeah. And I told her that. Then she started to like, maybe she was surprised that I said that. And in a way that it was a reductive tone, which is like, oh, okay, maybe we shouldn't pay him this much. That was like her reaction. Oh. But I was more genuinely surprised. I didn't know you could get paid that much after business school. Right. Remember, I was earning $490 a month. Yeah. I was earning $1,000 a month. In TV. And that was a large salary for me. So I was, you know, at this place where, again, privilege is relative. I all of a sudden realized, like, wow, okay, if I'm foregoing this salary to start this company, it's a huge risk. If this company fails, okay, what do I do? Now I remembered the privilege bar is high because I just finished at Stanford. It's very different from many underdogs, for many people who come from immigrant communities who don't have that bar of privilege or Stanford credentials. And I recognize that. That's a privilege that I have. So I was like, do you know what? I'm the youngest I'll ever be right now. Let me just try to take this risk and do my best and work really hard to make Nala happen. So that's how I got comfortable with trying to do it. It wasn't, oh yeah, just naturally. Like, okay.
Yeah, because you're only, I mean, I told you this, the only one friend among my community or circle of friends who start a company but do not come from privilege. A lot of our friends, a lot of my friends, their fathers, their grandparents have entrepreneurial background. So I think their safety net is already there. But for you, you just go all in. I mean, I have so much respect for you, Benjamin. This is why I still, like, I mean, I just look up to you. I'm like, wow, you have the guts to carry it forward and then to keep fighting and then prove everybody's wrong. I mean, that's the underdog journey. Like you've been underestimated. You've been probably like looked down upon or like underrated by people, right? But you continuously prove them wrong, right?
It's not easy at all. Yeah, like the rejections, the no's, I think about them sometimes. Like it's hard to not take personally.
Yeah.
When VCs reject you, just trying to build a company. You know, I see sometimes I see like a friend who I know really well, and I know how much work they put into their company, but then they can just raise like $10 million like that.
Right.
And they live in the US, they're building a company for the US, and you're building for emerging markets, which is a lot harder to build for and a lot harder to build businesses in. And there's a lot more nonsense you have to deal with while building in some of these markets. But you see sometimes your friends just, oh yeah, I just raised like $5. I remember a comment one day, we had raised $10 million. And let me give some background context. 2017, we graduated from Stanford. I chose to go back home and forego large salaries. 2018, we launched our first product. We get a cease and desist letter from the largest mobile banking service in Tanzania. 2019, we get into Y-Combinator. 2019, 1 week before demo day, my co-founder quits on me. 2020, pandemic happens. We need to pivot the business. Shut down the whole business in 2021, pivoting to cross-border payments business. 2021, we're pivoting to cross-border payments business. More than half of my investors said this will never work. This is going to be a massive failure. 2022, launch in the UK. I'd never lived in the UK before. 0 employees in the UK. 2023, business starts growing. Raised $10 million at the end of 2022 to 2023. I said, guys, let's focus on trying to build this company. Let's focus on revenue. 2024, finally become profitable. Get more than $10 million in revenue. We made more revenue than money we've ever raised. Yeah. Became profitable 5.5 months. Then 2024, July, raised $40 million. People don't realize it was 8 years of grinding to even get there. People don't see the, okay, cool, oh, look, Nala out of nowhere. And the discipline it takes in each one of those painful moments every single year of things, laying off people, like moving from a larger organization to small ones, hitting the reset button, making that difficult decision, most people would have just thrown in the towel. And people just see, oh yeah, Nala, okay, whatever. I'm like, dude, when I was moving, I've never lived in England before. I'd never been in England before, like lived there. So like I'm coming to England and I'm trying to find, I'm going to like East London to Barking and Dagenham and Ilford, carrying flyers myself, carrying like the banner. I'm staying in like some cheap Airbnb on some couch where there's 4 university students and we're sharing 1 bathroom. It was gross. We had no office in London, nothing. And just trying to hustle around to make this business happen. We had 0 customers. Okay, got to 10 customers, got to 100 customers, got to 500 customers. And then today, 500,000 customers. Whoa. You know, but nobody remembers those like, oh, you know, and sometimes I get frustrated with my team because they don't know the story. Yeah. They don't know, guys, we can't spend money just like that. You know, we had to hustle to even get to this point. And so every time we spend money as a business, I feel the own pinch like it's my own money. And I'm like, guys, and so when we raised this $40 million, we had a few term sheets and VCs gave us term sheets. Why? Because they said, for the dollars you spent for the revenue generated is much higher capital efficiency than most of the businesses we've seen. But Jordan, you know what? Despite that, we still got 79 rejections from VC funds.
Why? Why do you think that is?
Number one reason for rejection was Africa.
Africa. Wow.
Number one reason for rejection. And to me, it's not because of the region, it's just because people didn't want to spend the time to learn about it. And I would offer, I'm like, hey, look, I'll come to your office. I'll draw everything out for you. I'll tell you about the market. And don't take my word for it. Here's 6 or 7 reports. And I'll also introduce you to people building in these markets so you can chat with them. Most people don't want to do that extra step.
Yeah.
But the people who did will get rewarded when Nala does well.
Wow. So tell us more about that founder's mentality of like pain tolerance. I've talked to many founders. Man, I'm just admiring and like impressed. You guys have a higher, maybe highest pain tolerance of any other workers in the world. This is why you guys in the helm seat. You're leading people. Can you tell us how you got through the pain? I mean, because pain is, they say in philosophy or in Buddhism, pain is inevitable part of life, but suffering is not. How do you not suffer so much and then choose to keep moving forward? You know pain is there, and you still hustle. You still keep going. Maybe there is something else out there that motivates you beyond just like surviving the pain? Or is it that you just built differently? You just, all right, this pain doesn't really kill me. I'm gonna keep moving.
I think when you realize the company is bigger than you.
Okay, so purpose.
Yeah. And I think I always tell people, if you want to do something, do it. Don't do it for the praise, do it for the purpose.
Don't do it for a praise, do it for purpose. Okay.
You should never start a company to do it for the praise. Like for me.
And what's your purpose, Benji?
I want to build payments for the next billion.
Okay.
All these emerging markets are often overlooked, but the world will need to trade with these markets. If you look at Africa, today 1.2 billion people, by 2050 it's going to be 2.5 billion, largest population and workforce in the world. Now, if you look at how do we enable global payments to happen to these regions, where 100 years from today, when I'm dead and gone, I can say proudly, it's like Coca-Cola. Like Nala enabled this whole new economy of trade to happen in these markets, making a lot of people in emerging markets significantly wealthier versus what they would have been. And that's why for us, we look at emerging markets, India, Latin America, Africa, markets that we've spent some time in or are investing in directly as a business. Now, back to the first piece is, I think for me, it's purpose, but also faith. Jordan, when I was leaving working at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, part of the reason I wanted to leave was knowing you're going to die is one of the most important things to realize and recognize.
So death.
Death is the only thing that's promised in life. You're going to die. I'm going to die. And I started to ask myself, okay, what do I want to be remembered for? Do I want to be remembered as this guy in this corner office that just like sat here in America and like made some decisions here and there, but when I die, I'm just going to be replaced by somebody else? Or do I want to be remembered for trying to change the world in a positive way and doing my best effort? Even if I failed at it, I know I tried my best.
Wow.
And the latter, even though significantly more harder, was worth it for me to put the effort in. And it was painful. And it still is painful. Betrayal when you're building a company sucks. Constant betrayal, people lying to you. You know, we've had some employees lie to me directly. You know, people try to steal from the company here and there. And people you trust betray you, or business partnerships that don't work out. And it's painful. I remember last year, I think you remember this, we were going through our first batch of like first lawsuits. And it was something that I had never even done before. Like, you know, the whole suit was frankly quite dumb. I was telling Jordan about it, and I was going through a lot emotionally. And I remember picking up the phone and calling one of these founders who runs a multi-billion-dollar fintech company in the US, their investor, Nala. And I call him and I was like, I need your advice. So we get on a Zoom call, and for 10 minutes I vent. I'm just like, this happened and they did this and they did that. And he just listened to me on Zoom. And he's like, are you done? I was like, yeah, I'm done. So I was like hoping that he would be like empathetic and, you know, here. But all he says was, Cool. Deal with it, but expect a lot more. Hung up on Zoom. And I thought he hung up accidentally, but no, I saw him like, when you like see somebody like going to hang up on Zoom.
Right.
So then I get off the phone and I'm like, that was such a useless call. And I just sit there in the office. Then I go back home and I couldn't sleep. And then at 2 a.m, I text him on WhatsApp. I said, hey, do you have a few minutes to chat? I was like, yeah, cool. I call him. I was like, hey, what did you mean by deal with it, but expect a lot more? He's like, listen, Benji, this is not a you thing. This is a normal part of building this business. Your tolerance for this pain needs to be normalized because you're gonna expect and see a lot more of this happen to you over the next 5 to 10 years as you're building this company. So the moment you take it out from being a you thing, you're not a bad CEO. Stop thinking that it's your fault. He's like, you got to take that guilt away from your mind and start normalizing. It's like, we have a whole line item on our balance sheet just to deal with things like this. Every year.
It's like you optimize some costs there.
And he says, the moment you take this out from being a you thing, it becomes a small problem. And that was the worst and best feedback, Jordan, I got in that moment that I needed. Because in that moment, that problem felt like it was everything. But 1 year from today, I'm sitting down with you, I was like, man, that problem was so dumb.
So minuscule, yeah.
And because the problems and the pain that we face since are significantly larger. So your tolerance towards those things get normalized. You're like, okay, cool. Like we've already seen this happen before. We know what's going to happen here.
Right.
So I think that is how that resilience gets built, is when these experiences happen to you. And also speaking with other founders, because I speak to, some of your friends who run companies. And when I say something like, yeah, this happened to us too. I'm like, really? And that's why I really think founder peer groups for, helping each other out are so critical, because mentally, your friends will never understand the sacrifices you are making if they've never built a company before. Your friends will never understand why you have to say no so constantly if they've never built a company before. Your friends will never understand your tolerance for pain if they've never built a company before. And I think we've had to get so used to normalizing some of these challenges where if I wish I could write and be verbal about every single thing that we've been through as a company without getting in trouble, where I wouldn't have a lawsuit if I actually told people what other people actually did to me or to other people in the company. And I have a discussion with other founders. They're like, yeah, that me too. I wish I could say what, I was like, wow, I wish I could show people like, hey, look, this is what it actually happened. Because then you can never tell the full story. And then the people only hear one side and you want to tell other story. Then there's like legal action, defamation, all these other things that come up. I'm like, do you know what? Whatever. Like the people who need to know, the people who truly need to know will know and will understand.
Right.
For the rest of the people, it's not your job to explain every single thing to them.
Right. So Benji, did you expect this at all? I mean, we went to Stanford Business School, right? We learned about this thing. Intellectually, we understood what it takes to raise money, to calculate the cap table, to talk to investors. But I think I heard, and based on my coaching founders journey, like it's not an intellectual journey to build a company. It's an emotional journey. Can you walk us the lowest low and highest high of your entrepreneurship journey? And maybe pick an example where you just like, I want to give up. And I'm done. But somehow you pivot back and no. I need to come back and I need to like strive even harder.
Yeah, I think one of the toughest ones early on we faced was when my co-founder told me he's quitting.
Oh, okay.
That was 1 week before demo day.
And I did not know that. It was before demo day?
Yeah, so demo day is the day
okay.
in Y-Combinator where you go and present in front of 2,500 investors.
Oh yeah, I remember this. He quit on you. I remember this.
And he came up to me 1 week before and he says, do you know what? I can't do it. It's like, I think it's probably best to just find a job in the United States and just work here. And that was quite a low, because no matter everything I wanted to build, I know, and I was like, God, what are you teaching me? What are you showing me? What do I need to learn from this?
Right.
And I tried my best. I was like, man, when somebody's quitting, they're quitting on the person. So he's quitting on me. And maybe he didn't believe that I could be a good CEO or a good leader and so on. And so I think that really hurt me in many different ways, because it started to re-trigger imposter syndrome again.
Right.
Am I not good enough? Am I not smart enough?
Right.
Am I not a good enough leader? Like all these questions naturally come into your head. And coming back from that and trying to raise money with no technical co-founder in the Bay Area for a business that operates in Africa, the amount of no's, I have over 300 no's in that round. 300, Jordan. 300. I have a whole spreadsheet of every single person who's told me no. And no, okay, go back again. No, go back again. No. And your mental sanity when you get told so often, and yet you still have to show up to the next meeting and try to be 100%.
Right.
That was a very low for me. And even though we had built nothing that we've built today at that time, and it was a different business, it was a complete business that we don't even use. But that was one of those moments that really hurt me and were really painful. Another one was the pivot, obviously, when we were pivoting the company. I remember telling the company we're pivoting the business. And I remember telling the investors, and when the investors said, this will never work. I had some of the best investors in the world who invested in Nala. I was like, this is going to be a complete failure. Don't do it. You will never be able to figure this out. And they would name our competitors. Like, this company is already worth $7 billion. This company is going public this year. This company, and you're just starting from scratch. There's no way you're going to compete with these companies. You've never lived in England before. You've never done this business. You don't understand FX and cross-border payments. And when you have people who you perceive as very smart and people you respect, who are globally respected in the VC industry, telling you that, it really messes with your mind, because you're like, okay, I have 6.5 months of runway left here. Do I make this decision to still pivot the business and take no salary to try to make this thing happen, and in a country, England, where I never lived before, and trying to find customers in a country that I've never, ever spent time living in?
Right.
And that, to me, I remember telling some of the team we were doing this, and people quit on me. People are like, I don't see it. And recently, one of my RX employees actually tweeted this thing. He's like, at the time when we were pivoting, I didn't see the vision, but now I do. I should have always believed. So at the time when you're saying these things, and I understand, I could imagine sitting in that seat and your CEO's living in Tanzania, never lived in England, telling everybody, guys, we're in Tanzania, but we're going to build this company in England. And you're like, dude, what? Most of us don't even have a passport. What are you talking about? We're going to be in England.
Oh, God.
Actually, I think 90% of the team didn't even have a passport. So I'm like, don't worry, we're going to figure this out. And getting people to believe and buy into what you're trying to build, obviously when people quit on you, when your investors say this is never going to work, that was a very, very low. And the highs include, seeing our customers come back, seeing our customers fight for us publicly, seeing our customers get into Twitter arguments with other people for us, seeing our customers championing us in WhatsApp groups, seeing our customers, even though they text me and sometimes it's very annoying, but the intention of wanting to see us win.
Right.
It's almost like a cult, like the Nala way, of how the customers use our product. Even sometimes we don't have the best FX rates, people will still come back and use Nala. It's like, oh, the Nala way. No, this is mine. Right. People feel part of something when they
loyalty.
There's a high. Our retention rates show it, but there's a very high loyalty that our Nala customers have because of how we've tried to build the business. And then even with that, Jordan, so those are highs. And seeing our team that we've built, the last 20 months, we moved from 7 employees to nearly 150 employees. Everything in the company broke. Right. But seeing those people who were there early, be very patient and help us try to figure stuff out as everything is breaking constantly, and understand and still try to be supportive. It makes me very proud of the team that we've built and the company we've built today.
Right. Thank you. And we're nearing the end of the interviews. Maybe you can also walk us through what's your who's your support system? I mean, I know God and prayers is really helpful. I mean, for me, that as well, spirituality can really boost something that is invisible. But is there anything else as a founder that you rely on to stay, I guess, survive, and then, I guess, now thriving, right? Like, you are here today, probably not just for who you are and what you have done, but maybe people around you.
Yeah, lots. I think I was thinking about this the other day. I think in every step of someone's life, there are people that unlock certain doors for them. And sometimes we get past that door and we forget to go back and thank them. When we raised this $40 million, I called like 10 people that I went to university with. My old roommates, like somebody, when I was going through a really tough time in university, he didn't even do anything for me. He was just mentally challenging me. He's like, Benji, like, don't worry, you got this. And just hearing that phrase from him. His name is Jordan Myers. And
another Jordan.
Yeah, another Jordan. And I remember, and I called him after. I was like, hey man, I just have a small like thank you gift I'm gonna send to you. And he's like, no, don't. I was like, no, please, like, let me just do this. And I think us as human beings, we need to find those people and thank them more. Like the person who wrote your recommendation letter to Stanford, the person who wrote your university recommendation letter, the person that wrote your job recommendation letter, like all those people, we often like move on with life and forget.
Right.
And forget who got you there and who helped you get there. And those are people as pillars I still try to find and go back to. And like, you know, even though we're at very different phases in life, still try to say thank you or call them, check in on them and appreciate them for how they opened a certain door for me. So faith is number one. My parents, my sister, like number two, like just being able to speak to them about stuff. It was also very difficult because sometimes you don't want to worry your parents, like especially my mom. I really don't want to worry them. And so a lot of the very challenging things with work, I try not to share because I don't want them to have like pressure and stress and be worried. And so those ones, it's like close friends, you, a few other people in our class that we went to school with, or other founders that I know. The founders have helped a lot because they've been through similar challenges. And so they're like, oh yeah, Benji, this happened to me too. We can get on a call really quickly and just jump on a call with me and just vent with me.
Right.
And I think being able to air that out to somebody like that is massively important. So that's a lot of my support system around me.
Right.
And then therapeutically, I do have one toxic habit. I like to go watch football games.
Okay.
So I do. I don't drink, I don't smoke, but football games is the one thing that
you will
like,
splurge on football games.
I'm just, it's just, I love football. It's a beautiful game. It's a beautiful sport. And that's one thing I'm like, okay, fine. Like Real Madrid's playing or Manchester United's playing. Like, fine, like let's go see.
This guy would like buy tickets for his dad and go to World Cup and then go to all different matches. And that's, kudos to you, man. Like I'm not into that, but
it's the one thing I try to save up to do. It's just like football games,
So Benji, we're wrapping up. We're gonna have you some questions. What's one thing that people totally get wrong about you, and what's the real story?
Oh wow, so many things.
Just one, like biggest misconception about you.
Oh, there's a lot.
The one that bothers you so much, and then this is like, guys, this is the real story.
I think the one that bothers me is when people assume that my family, my parents are extremely wealthy, that they paid for kindergarten, 12th grade, they paid for university, paid for me to go to Stanford. There's stories, people are saying that, oh, my dad funded NALA. My dad and my mom have not given me a single cent to NALA.
Right.
And, you know, people will make these stories. And I think the challenge is, I think there's elements of it that are difficult. So obviously I'm brown East African.
I was going to ask you that. Like, can I ask you that question?
Yeah.
Can you tell us here about this misconception that you're not African enough to be an African entrepreneur?
Yeah, it's painful. You know.
What makes African for you? What is Africa? Because you mentioned that as well, like how investors do not want to learn about this continent. I mean, it's not even a country, it's a continent.
Yeah. So on the first part, you know, I grew up in Tanzania. It's my home, my land, my love. It's where my family and parents live today. It's where a lot of my friends I grew up with. It's where a lot of the big lessons I learned as a child came from. And so my patience, my empathy, my perception of the region, my wanting to help the region is a big thing that drives me.
Mm-hmm.
When Nala does well, hopefully one day when we become a publicly listed company, what will I do with the proceedings is I'd love to go build schools in tech across Africa, but also hospitals. And not just Africa, but other emerging markets, because I really think, well, opportunities everywhere, it's not equally distributed to people, especially in emerging markets where the potential can never be realized that they have. So healthcare is a big problem that limits success of many different people because they can't afford healthcare or poor hospital services in many of these countries. When you are 17 and have gone to a funeral of 2 of your friends because of a healthcare issue, it really triggers how you view the world. And for me, experiencing things like that, where you see young people passing away at a young age because of poor healthcare systems, even though they're amazing or very bright people I went to school with, passing away.
Wow.
It changes your perception of life and gives you a new set of motivation to help other people. So I call myself Tanzanian. It's always challenging sometimes. Like, I see people write about me on Twitter here and there, especially Tanzanians. Like, oh, he's not Tanzanian, he's Indian. Indians like, he's not Indian, he doesn't speak Hindi or any Indian languages, he doesn't know any Bollywood music. Like, sorry. And then, every culture is like, oh, you're not us, right?
Right.
So, and then I go to America, people are like, I don't understand. You look Indian, you call yourself African, and you have a Mexican last name.
Yeah, it's true.
like, what's going on?
You're the same. My name is Jordan. My last is Arabic. I'm from Indonesia. I'm like, people, that is so confusing. I guess this is why we're friends.
So, and I obviously I'm proudly Tanzanian, but it's sometimes difficult because I think historically there's a lot of challenges with brown people in Africa and what that's looked like.
That's another underdog piece of you.
And other pieces like I'm brown and Christian, which is a very tiny subsect of brown people in Africa. So there's obviously Ismailis, Ishnaseris, there's Gujus, all these people who have done very well and successfully in business. And people assume because you're brown, you're part of that group or part of that community. And that's always been difficult. Like, oh, Jordan's dad is probably the owner of these 5,
brown
big
businesses.
Yeah, brown businesses, like the largest logistics company or the largest whatever. And that's not always the case. So I think because of that, there's always these misconceptions of how I grew up or me not being Tanzanian. And I think that's constantly challenging. But, nowadays, I try to use it in places of strength. Like we're launching India. People think I'm Indian.
Wow. Yeah. By the way, he just launched Pakistan, Philippines, and soon India. Wow.
Soon India. So people are like, oh, an Indian founder is launching India. I'm like,
yeah, take it whatever. I'm Indian, but I'm Tanzanian.
But then Hindi, I'm like, nah, Hindi nahi aati. I don't speak any. So my Indian friends in America roast me all the time. They're like, dude, you're the most non-Indian Indian I've ever met in my entire life. You don't know any Indian activities, any Indian events or traditions. You don't know how to dance either. So what kind of brown person
are you?
The only thing you do that's brown, you show up late. You're still brown on that. Showing up on brown time.
Yeah, we're brown.
but everything else, it's so I think that's been quite the adjustment and it's. Yeah, nowadays I try not to take it as personally. People write about it, I'm like, whatever. Just focus on building the company and stay focused on that.
Right. Thanks, Benji. One thing to ask you: what's 1 or 2 advice that you would give to any underdog out there who want to start something meaningful or want to just even survive, or who in the same position like you before? What would you tell them?
I would tell them what my mom says: if you don't take responsibility, you take orders. And that's a principle of life. Whether you want to start a company, you got to take responsibility of understanding the problem and falling in love with it. No one's going to handhold you and all right, come, let me show you A, B, C, D, and we're going to figure this out. No one's going to do that. You got to figure it on your own. And it's a very, very, very lonely journey. And if you don't have self-discipline, you're never going to build anything. So that's why Jordan, for me today, I have so much empathy and love and patience and kindness for anybody trying to build a company. Whether it's a small hole in the wall shop, whether you're just trying to sell food on the side of the road.
Right.
I have so much empathy for those dreamers, those believers that just like, do you know what? I'm going to quit my job and try to do this. And some people don't even have a choice.
Right.
In most regions in the world, entrepreneurship is not a choice. It's a requirement to survive. So I have so much patience and empathy for people like that, and I want to see them succeed. And I'm constantly always team founders.
Team founders.
Always. Yeah.
Cool. Thanks, man. All right, guys. Thank you so much for listening and staying tuned with us. This is Benji Fernandes, and I look forward to the next episode with you all. Take care. Bye. Cool, Benji. Thanks, man.